Okay, this is Jimmy Jive, and you're listening to Motor City Rock Talk. Today, I thought I'd change things up a little bit and start with a little bit of the music of the artist I'm going to feature. The artist today is a legend in Detroit. He's a bass player, singer from Seduce, but of course, he'd also been known for playing in bands like Dame and Sparks. My guest today, of course, is Mark Andrews. But before we get into the interview, let's listen to a little bit of classic Seduce. All right, one of the things that I wanted to ask you was on the first album cover, you and David have got these white flying V-style guitars. Whatever
Yeah.
happened to those? You
Well,
know?
I still have mine.
Do you?
I still have mine. It's in storage and still in the anvil case. It's been through a lot of different climates, so it's starting to get that real nice checkered look and all. We had the anvil cases made for him, and I felt bad for Michael because he used to carry him up and down steps,
You're right.
playing theaters and stuff like that. And ironically, when I heard they're doing a Hard Rock Cafe in Detroit many years ago, I tried to find that version of that guitar. And originally, I thought he sold it to Rick Craig from Halloween. And I tried to track Rick down, and that never happened. To no avail. I wanted to buy David's guitar back off of Rick and donate my guitar and David's guitar with like an album cover and have like a little booth in Detroit Hard Rock Cafe. But after talking to corporate Hard Rock Cafe, they said, "Well, we would love to have you donate the guitars, but we can't guarantee where they're going to be." And I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
hell with that. I don't want to give them these two guitars and ends up someplace in Mississippi or something. Who
Sure.
gives a shit there?
Exactly.
Know?
Do you do
But
you do you use that bass anymore? I mean, the last few times I've seen you, you ever bring it out and crank it out on that?
it's something that's I have and I'll probably never get rid of because of what it is. But no, I never play it. And it's funny because like when I go to storage, I'll pull it out and I'll do a little couple, little licks on it, and it still sounds pretty cool. And that was the thing back then. It was like kind of bands always had lead singers.
Right.
David and I were saying like we got to do something to make us special, kind of like a ZZ Top thing, how they had the matching guitars and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And
No.
that's like where that went into. But Park Freighter at Alvarito Guitars made those for us.
Yeah.
David and I drew them up and designed them, and it was like a year and a half before he got them made. But it worked out good because it was right when we were getting ready to do the album.
The other thing was I watched the segment with you guys on the beat with Doug Podell, and
Uh-huh.
the thing that was interesting to me about that, Chuck kind of said something a little different, and maybe it was just because of the time. Did you guys, you were saying and labeling yourself more or less as a heavy metal band? Chuck more or less implied, nah, we're more heavy rock. Halloween was more heavy metal. Is that accurate to say, or do you think just at the time you were more both?
Back then, it's like we were friends like in Europe that were sending us stuff that wasn't even out in the United States yet.
Right.
And we appreciated all that. But I think our roots are more along lines of like punk, glam, kind of things like that, and different styles instead of thrash metal or
Right.
anything that's very heavy. Even though we had some songs that were similar to that. Yeah, like I would say Halloween was great at, or still are, at what they do, but they're more of like a hardcore heavy metal band compared to us, where we changed it up a lot. We have a heavier side to it, but I think our influences are more fast. Since instead of just like listening to like Saxon or Iron
Right.
Maiden or
Sure.
things like that.
Yeah, I found it interesting, from that, and I kind of figured that, but that you were into David Bowie and obviously T-Rex and some of those bands. What were some of the other, like, because you mentioned glam?
Back when I was very enthusiastic about growing up learning music, learning bass parts off of albums, I was like into Alice Cooper and
Right.
different things like that. Like Dennis Dunaway's like my favorite bass player of all time. David was into like Rainbow and Richie Blackmore and in, bands like Black Sabbath, where I was into like New York Dolls, or Cheap Trick, bands like that.
Right.
So all of us together, we hear different things, but there's a magic when the three of us got together to write.
Definitely was. Oh my God.
Yeah. Ironically, all the songs that we play out, it's like we play so much. We play Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, or whatever like that. We take Sundays off. Monday, we set up the equipment. Tuesday, we start rehearsing. It's like, who's got an idea? Who's got an idea? And it's like, well, that was cool. And then we stick to that one idea. And Wednesday, we tighten up. Thursday, we finish it. I'd write lyrics Thursday night, and Friday, we were playing it out.
Yeah.
So it wasn't much other than how we were together. Accomplished, I guess, a lot, but we
Yeah.
didn't really spend much time writing songs, in a sense.
Especially probably at the early days when you guys were doing a lot of covers and doing a lot of sets in those days.
Well, it was unheard of.
Right.
Back in the early days, we played 4 sets a night.
Yes.
And you weren't allowed to play originals. Once the bar owners see we're packing the place, and it's like, well, do what the hell you want.
Yeah. As long as buying alcohol, what do they care what you play? You could be playing banjo music.
Oh, yeah. They bar owners, we buy the soundboard. You guys are playing too loud with your volume meters. And it's like, well, but there's 1,500 people in the room. Just do what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there clubs you preferred playing in over others?
I don't know. It got to be, I like tracks. I love harpos, for different things. Every room sounds different. Main act, when it was in the middle of the room, I don't know. Center stage was cool.
Yeah.
Or Second Chance in Ann Arbor was cool. I mean, different stages. Like some stages that I like playing might be good for me, but not good for David,
Right.
and vice versa. Because how the bass sounds, or I don't know. It's like you get accustomed to just doing it, no matter where you're at.
Yeah, you get used to it. Played so much.
Then it got to the point where there was like a bickering war. Like, well, okay, well, if you're going to play the East Side, you're either going to play the Ritz or you're going to play Harpo. Whoever paid us the most, we'd have an exclusive. That's where we'd play. You wouldn't play both places.
Is that really true? Are you talking about sort of like a blackball type of thing? That one club might blackball you because of that?
I don't think so much blackball, but it wasn't like, well, you can't play Harpo's this Friday and then play, the Ritz on Saturday.
Right.
We want you for both nights, and we're going to pay you this amount of money as long as you continue playing here instead of there. Because, before the internet, man, we were guaranteed to pack the place every night we played.
Yes.
And then it got to the point where we were playing Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. And I said, hell with that. If we're playing 3 nights, then people are going to say, okay, Seduce is playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday at whatever club. And people say, well, I'll just go see him on Friday night, or I'll go see him on Saturday night. And then I said, hell with that. Let's play one night and make the same amount of money for the 3 nights, and everybody will be there that night.
Absolutely. The other thing was, I had heard that, especially in the early days before you guys formed, the trio style that you became, that you didn't really like to sing as far as lead vocals. You were more shy as far as that, or you wanted to sing backup vocals exclusively. Is that accurate?
Pretty much, I never thought about being a singer, but I always sang a couple songs in sets to help our singer out.
Right.
And then it got to the point where people said, man, well, we like your voice better. And I'm like, oh, yeah, well, thanks. Just going through the motions. I mean, I never wanted to be the singer, and I still hate singing, but I do it.
You still have a really strong voice. You always did, and it fit the music so well. I never got to see you guys, obviously, with Mickey or Fennell or anything like that, but I have videotapes of those shows. I do prefer you as a lead vocalist.
Well, one of the reasons, and David and Chuck, although Chuck can sing and do, like the backups, that's one of the things that, harmonies, unless it's a yeah or some background. Later in different bands I was in after Seduce, and we had 3-4 guys singing. It's like, wow, what another dimension. On the albums, I did backups myself. Live is another story.
The other thing a buddy of mine wanted me to ask you about, because you guys were living together at the infamous Seduce house, and you didn't have a day job, from what I understand. David didn't have a day job. How often were you guys practicing? Were you practicing every day?
Well, it goes down the lines of like when I met David, and I actually stole from Mickey, and then we were putting Dane together, and I was looking for guitar players, and I went to an ad, a band looking for a bass player. Went all the way out to the west side, and it was, Mickey's house. They were doing, Judas Priest. We're talking mid 70s, late 70s. David actually didn't even talk to me while you're jamming. He just sat there and later to hear that he says this guy's too cool to play with us. He's not going to play with us. So he didn't even waste his time talking to me. Make a long story short, I ended up, said, hey man, I'm not really going to join your band, but I have an offer for you. And David jumped on it. And I took him from his parents' house into his first band house. And we were living by the Detroit City Airport. That band ended up forming into Dame. But to answer your question, I worked a job in those days, but then we started to play out and do the things like that, and we all kind of quit our jobs and from what we were doing. So yeah, I mean, everything was just band orientated. We were like a, a little cult.
Right,
Everybody
right.
lived in the same house. It was like the dad of everybody. I made sure everybody ate. Nobody seen no money, and I fed everybody and made sure everybody got by. And as we progressed,
Well, as
you
far
know.
as eating, I understand most of the time they didn't eat too well. There wasn't a
Well,
lot of
no,
money
man.
other than the girls that would bring you food or
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes like in the early days when we worked for the door or do things like that,
right,
we made like 50 bucks a gig,
right,
and
sure,
I'd feed 8 guys on like $10 a day. And we had our budget meals and we had our things going that, and through our fans and friends who worked in restaurants and dating strippers with money and just helping us out, so we got by. But we
yeah,
didn't have no day jobs. It was our life was being in a band, and that's funny because nobody's like that anymore, band
no,
wise. Yeah, which goes along the lines of like when David and I were in Dane, things just kind of didn't go as way we planned it. And David and I did like a vision board. You are here. This is where you want to be. And back in them days, you had to have your own PA and lights and stuff. Ours didn't provide that. And we had the offer to, what are we going to do? So Dane broke up. David and I stayed together, and we had the offer to go check out the Sparks band. Perfect for us because we were kind of getting a name known for ourselves in Dane because we were kind of a different band. We were playing cool stuff, and people weren't used to hearing that kind of stuff. And we wanted to keep that mystique about ourselves. Okay,
yeah,
so we joined Sparks. They had a Canadian agent, but they were doing like Tom Petty and Molly Hatchet and Pretenders and Pat Benatar and things like that we didn't want to really be known for, even though that was like the top 40 music of those days. And
right,
so, but we had a Canadian agent, so we played mostly all throughout Canada, and we played 4 or 5 nights a week, and that was our money, our life. And I kept the band house that was on the east side, and my younger brother kind of watched it for us while we were gone on tour. And that band, we knew we had to have these speaker cabinets for our PA and these power amps, and our money went together as like the form to buy what we needed, put Seduce together. And so we knew that we wanted to be 3-piece, so we got rid of the one guitar player so David we could used to playing 3-piece. And then we were started to rehearse, and we had Mickey as our drummer in Seduce, and then we got rid of the drummer. We had Mickey playing in Sparks, and then we had our sound man and our light man that was going to be in Seduce running. And so next thing you know, we're making like 5-6 of the money, and all the money went back into putting Seduce. And then it got to the point where the agent wanted us to start playing Detroit, and that's when we decided, okay, well, we got Seduce together, and 2 weeks later we came out of Seduce. But along that line, though, David and I came back after like a 5-week tour, and my brother says, "I've been trying to get a hold of you." That was days before the cell phone, and he says, "You got evicted."
oh
And
no,
we had, after driving all night long from like Montreal or something like that, we get back to Detroit. We ended up renting a U-Haul truck and loading everything that we owned in the U-Haul truck. We called Michael Miller, who gratefully let us move into his house in Dearborn, and that's where we rehearsed as Seduce originally.
Now, when you rehearsed there, were you
Mm-hmm.
playing anywhere near the volume that you were legendarily known for in the clubs?
Oh, we played pretty loud, but we didn't use like our stage gear for rehearsals.
Right.
And I mean, Davis still used Marshall, like a half sack, and I had this old Bassman, 130 amp like that. We needed what we needed to rehearse and had the feel that we wanted.
Right.
But it wasn't like we used a bunch of pig noses and a
Right.
little.
No, I didn't. I didn't figure you did
Yeah.
that. Well, like I said, my one friend wanted me to ask you. I mean, because we used to
Uh-huh.
go see all the time, and you were so loud, and it was awesome. It was like you guys were rock stars. That big show. I mean, that pounding show. How's your hearing?
I think it's actually pretty good. I mean, although my brother's ex wife was studying to be an audiologist, and she really didn't know anybody. So my brother got all my friends who are all musicians to take the audiology test so she could use to using this audiology thing or something.
Yeah.
And we all had the same hearing loss. And I thought they were bullshitting me, man, because they do a frequency and I couldn't hear it, but everybody else said they could hear it and see the light go off when the thing was going on like that. So I guess I got some kind of hearing loss, but pretty good for all the damage that they've been through.
Is it in the lower register? Because I hear that's the most common, especially for
No,
musicians.
it's actually a higher register.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, every now and then I walk to David's side of the stage and then, oh, God, you're talking pretty loud. But, I mean, my side of the stage wasn't as bad as his. I guess because the low frequency time, so it's harsh on your ears.
Were you able to hear some of these shows? I know you had your own sound man and you were running Did you have a lot of issues with that as far as playing that loud to being able to hear? Because I mean, you guys they didn't have the earplug style monitors then. You just had to use floor monitors, or were you just that tight a band that even if you didn't, you could just get through it?
You know, there's nothing worse than hearing yourself the way you don't want to hear yourself. And half the time, floor monitors back in them days sounded so dry and flat. I
Right.
tell them to turn them off. I tell them to turn them off, and I got used to singing just by feel or hearing the fronts a little bit. You know, that front of the house. You know,
Yeah.
blasting across the room. You know, some rooms sounded better than others. You know,
Sure.
but like it, I just got used to it. I mean, we toured with Vinnie Vince and Invasion, which turned out to be Slaughter later, but
Right.
those guys had, you know, back before sampling a reel to reel with all their vocals, harmonies and stuff like that on the reel to reel. And Bobby Rock played to a click track. And so when it came to the part of the song where their choir was, it was like studio vocals. So they never had to adjust their monitors. It didn't matter. Just turn these suckers off, man. There's nothing worse than hearing yourself the way you don't want to hear yourself.
Right.
So,
That could definitely affect the way you're going to sing.
you know, certain notes I, you know, put my finger in my ear like people do and stuff like that. But, you know, yeah, you get used to just hearing the fronts, and that's a great feeling if your fronts are kicking and you can hear that reverb of the room, and it just,
Yeah, that must have been a major high for you guys playing those gigs because you guys were the biggest band out of Detroit, especially of that style. There's hands down, in my opinion. I've seen a lot of bands. I played in bands. Going to a Seduce show, you knew it was going to be packed. You knew it was going to be loud. You knew it was going to be in your face, and the tunes were phenomenal. Still are.
yeah, well, that was, you know, the soundtrack of a lot of people's lives back in them days, you know.
And it brings back a lot of nostalgic memories. Any news on any possible Seduce shows coming back to Detroit?
Well, I have no problem playing another show. You know, my only thing is wanting to be able to do a good show. I mean, I usually, when we do shows, I come up there like 4 or 5 days before that and we rehearse. And, I mean, I have everything on recorded that we've ever done, basically. And I just like to do some different stuff instead of just, you know, when we get there and, okay, well, let's do these songs. Oh, you got your common ones that you do all the time, but I like to mix it up a little bit. But then it's like we don't play the same. David doesn't have a Floyd Rose no more. Different things like that, how we used to do things. So, but I mean, yeah, when we play and it's like hours behind you and you're playing, there's nothing like it. You know?
I mean, and
And
it's got to be tough as far as that too, because going out and having the history that you've got, the fans expect you to always start with Viper's Bite, you're forced to do, you know, Headbangers,
Oh, yeah.
or you know, they expect that. And I know you'd want to do new material. Speaking of which, the last show that I saw you at, you were playing some new material, and there was talk of actually releasing some. Has there been anything more with that?
Well, you know, I came up there, you know, a couple years ago, and we did a bunch of basic track of songs that people know, but we never recorded. Then COVID hit, and different things happened, you know, this and that, and it's like we got the basic tracks down. I mean, I was going to do the vocals here in Nashville, you know, not that like we're that kind of band, you know. I mean, we're
Right.
not like I'm not going to send stuff on MP3s to David and he put this part down and Chuck put this part down. We have to be together. That's just kind of band we are. Yeah, it's like how we write and everything like that. So it's like, yeah, I could write a song, but I'm not a dictator and say this is the way the song is. You got to play every part the way it is. It's just basically an idea of a song. Now everybody put their parts in it. Let's
Sure.
do it how we've done it. You know, always done it.
Yeah, and it always seems to work. And the other thing I was going to mention is that I've seen you back in the day, obviously in the 80s, late 80s into the 90s. But in the last time I think you were here was what, 2019? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
You guys were tight
Yeah.
as hell and just as loud. Maybe even
You know,
tighter in some senses.
it's kind of it's a weird thing because it's like we could not play together in 3-4 years and we get down to Chuck's basement and it's like riding a bike, as they say.
Right.
And it just comes together. I mean, Chuck still plays. He plays mostly guitar though.
Yeah.
David still plays, and I play every day. You know, I mean, I'm into a couple of different things, but it's not like okay, I haven't picked the bass up or
Sure.
anybody hasn't played their instruments. Maybe our hands don't move as fast because we're older now, like that, but we can still do our job.
Well, if that's the case, it doesn't show. It doesn't show. You guys
Yeah.
still put on a hell of a show. And then the people that come out to see it are
Yeah.
always wanting more. And as for new recordings, I can understand because of the distance where it would be difficult as far as timing. The other thing I wondered, and I kind of brought this up with Chuck, was I know you guys then with Wheels did radio broadcasts, you know, Harpo's and at the Ritz. Phenomenal shows. They still hold up to this day. Why was that never officially released? Why did you guys never put that together? Maybe, mix it down or do something with it.
They asked us to do the broadcast. We did 4 live broadcasts,
Right.
but it wasn't ours to do anything with. It was Wheels.
Oh,
I
so
mean, they
they
put it
own the
out.
rights?
Well, yeah, I mean, they were doing it with other bands also, but
Right.
we ended up doing 4 broadcasts, and some of them are pretty cool. I mean, I think I got them somewhere, but like the one at Harpo's, like you listen to us doing Highway Star, it's phenomenal.
Yes, it is.
And
So it was a thing that couldn't get.
we never pursued it. I mean, that might be something, that possibility. I'm sure somebody's got it somewhere, but yeah, it wasn't like offered to us like, hey, you guys want to release this or anything like that. It was just like something for the fans of Wheels.
But so you never thought of like, okay, if Wheels owns, let's do our own live recording.
To this day, it's our songs.
Right.
It's just that they recorded it. So yeah, but yeah, it was pretty respectful considering being live.
It's phenomenal. I have to tell you, you mentioned if people have it. I have it on every format you can, other than vinyl. I've got it recorded on cassette. I've got it on reel to reel. I even transferred all those shows onto 8-track because I'm kind of a nut when it comes to different things.
Then you're
like
the
that.
one to talk to, and you're one to talk to. If we talk to the record company we're working with, maybe we could do something.
Yeah, because they're. I got them from a buddy of mine that recorded them to reel to reel the night they came out. He had them stored away, and I said, "What? You got that stuff? I need that. I want that. I want to get a copy of that." And he goes, "Okay, fine." He gave it to me, and they held up. They hadn't deteriorated, because being tape,
Nice.
it's impossible to do it. They sound phenomenal. I've got an Akai reel to reel with glass heads, man, and I play it in here, and that shit brings back so many memories. I'm 61. I know you're a bit older, but right there with you, man, partying and just getting into it. It didn't matter if you were playing originals. I mean, all your originals were killer, but I mean, some of the covers you did. I mean, Stepping Stone, Ace of Spades, Detroit Rock City. You didn't just do them. You put on a Seduce spin.
Well, that's what we weren't going to do, like, the hits that you hear on WRIF or Wheels back in them days that you hear every day as far as the cover goes. We always try to pick obscure covers that people all know, but put our own little thing to it.
The one that really stands out, because my band, we covered it after hearing you guys did it, was Stepping Stone. I mean, my God, that was just such, as my drummer would have put it, such a pounding version. He wasn't a fan of the Monkees, but you made him a fan of the Monkees just from playing it. Of course, you didn't play it like the Monkees, but I mean, that one, and of course, Ace of Spades. I mean, my God. And was that was a song you had played prior to Chuck, I take it. Is that correct?
Yeah. We used to open up for them with that back in the day.
Yeah, I had thought maybe it was because of Chuck, because of his background being more into some of the punk metal and some of that stuff. You guys did do that. One of the other ones that I always thought was super interesting was when you did Blondie, Call Me.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but man, there's a pretty cool version of it out there that we did in the studio.
Yeah, that was killer, because no other metal band or hard rock band of your time would even have thought to do that. Like you said, they'd have been doing Deep Purple, Zeppelin, or anything like that. And you guys stepped out of the boundaries. Not only stepped out of the boundaries, but made it cool. I wasn't a Blondie fan, but you guys said you're gonna do it. I'm like, wow, that's a killer song. At least your version of it.
I love David's guitar solo on that song.
Yeah. And the T-Rex stuff, of course, you guys later on recorded Slider. Was there any other T-Rex that you did other than that?
We used to do Baby Strange. Yes. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool groove to it. Did a lot of sweet songs.
Yeah.
Different plasmatics we used to do.
You did the Plasmatics.
Yeah, we did a song called Sometimes I.
That's crazy.
I mean, we used to do Raven.
Yeah, I knew you did Raven.
I can't even remember half the songs we do. Maybe it'll click to me. I don't know.
Sure. I know it's been a long time and all that, but and of course the other thing, there's somebody local here too that I know and the whole band knows. Do you remember a gentleman named Otto?
Oh yeah, Otto. Yeah, the bicycle shop guy.
Yeah. Well,
he's the one that came over and filmed our house, how we got into the movie.
Right. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
He also claims he's got some of the best live performances that you've ever played, but he
Quite
won't.
possible, man.
he won't do anything with them. He said you guys were planning on doing something with it. Was that the case?
I mean, he was always around and had cameras and stuff like that, so I wouldn't doubt he's got some cool stuff, you know. I mean, Otto's like to me was like, "Hey, Otto, how you doing?" Kind of. Chuck knew him better,
Right.
and just got so many people back in them days, you know. But Otto was always, you know, righteous guy for us, you know, took care of stuff like that. But I'm sure he's got some great stuff.
Yeah, but he won't
You know?
do anything with it. I offered him. I said, "Look, I'm not looking to bootleg this stuff. I just like to get the stuff out, get it on YouTube, because you guys are still hot. People still love you in this town. You know, they've got Seduce Worldwide page, and they'd love to see that stuff. Whether you know make a buck off it or not make a buck, you got to understand something, Mark, and I'm sure you do. Us Seduce fans are getting older, and we're gonna start dropping. I'd say hit it while the iron's hot, man. Hit it while the iron's hot. Get that stuff out there, man."
Well, you know, ironically, I was at this tattoo convention horror show thing in Nashville here, and some guy had a little booth, and he says, "You're Mark Andrews, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah," you know, and he ended up doing a Rockin' Pod thing just a couple months ago here in Nashville, and I was on a podcast with Ricky Rackman, Ricky Fox, and a bunch of LA people because of the movie.
Yeah.
And ironically, like you're saying, it's like I didn't even know what to expect when I went there in the morning, but I had a handler and I was doing all these podcasts and radio interviews and all stuff like that for like 3 hours. And then I did the podcast with Ricky Rackman and all stuff like that. And we were talking about the movie, and it was a cool time. But what I was getting to is how many people that were there at the podcast that had albums and singles and stuff from us that I'd never even seen,
Right.
having me sign autographs like that. And it's like my wife says, "Well, you know, doesn't that make you feel good?" Because I just, you know, figured, well, you know, that's something I did back in the past, not thinking that people would even know anything.
Oh,
It was pretty cool.
they really do. I mean, I worked at Harmony House, and I remember when the second album came out, I was pushing the hell out of it because, yeah, there was some other metal that came out, but I was always trying to be a loyalist to Detroit bands, and especially bands like you guys that were good. And I thought we're on the cusp of going national, especially after you being in that movie and being the only East Coast band that was featured in it. That had to make you guys feel really good.
It was pretty strange, you know, because I just thought that's the one thing about the movie is because if it's supposed to be a documentary on heavy metal per se, I mean, they should have went to all the different markets, you know, went to the East Coast, you know, Philadelphia, Boston, and interview people like it. Like going to, like, if they're doing a movie about metal and going to the Token Lounge and interviewing the people that were just there. The premiere of the movie, and it's like everybody's laughing because they know this guy, and it's like, oh, there's so and so, and of course, you know, the bands that were famous already in the movie. And then our segment comes up, and everybody's like, who the hell is this? So,
And you talking about
we
the
came
premiere
out
out in L.A. when it was out there?
yeah, and just the movie in general. Everybody's like, you know, everybody knows everybody in the
Sure.
movie from LA, and it's like you're saying like we're the only kind of East Coast kind of in a sense, Midwest, whatever you want to call it, band in the movie. Nobody knew who the hell we were or how we got in the movie or anything.
Well, you got it in,
So-
from what I understand, because of your affiliation with IRS, and they did
Yeah,
the
but
soundtrack.
the IRS basically had, you know, started their metal division of their label, and they had 5-6 different bands that Penelope could have picked from.
That were
but-
from the East Coast?
Well, yeah, like Nuclear Assault and people like that from Ohio and different bands that were on the Iowa version of their label. But because of Otto, him coming over and filming us, Penelope thought it was very original, and that's how we got picked to do the movie. It could have been any one of the IRS bands, but IRS basically paid for the movie.
Right.
You know, Miles Copeland, you know, his company. So, yeah, he wanted one of his bands in the movie.
Feel you came off looking as far as that movie. What I meant by that was, you know, Chuck had mentioned that obviously in the film and all that, you guys are in cars, you know, which might have been a representation of coming from Detroit, Motor City, and you're doing the interview. He stated something later that she didn't like the fact that you guys were even in a movie because every other band was from the West Coast and you were from the East Coast.
I never heard about that because I continued on with a relationship, not a physical relationship, but like
Right.
talking with Penelope after, because I turned her on to a bunch of stuff, you know, diets and different things like that, just as a person.
Right.
And I never got any animosity about that because they already had all these bands from LA and all the
Right.
different people in the movie. So whether it was us or whatever other bands I had that time, I don't think that really mattered. But basically, when we flew into LA and the movie company picked us up from the airport, us all being car guys, were like, "Oh, look at that car! Look at that car! Look at that car!" And they had the idea of renting the cars, and they took us to this big, huge lot. They had all these movie cars, and we got to pick whatever we wanted for the movie.
Yeah.
And ironically, David and Chuck had to give their cars back. My odometer didn't work on that '56 Cadillac, and I got to keep it for like a week.
No
You know,
doubt.
so I cruised that thing everywhere.
Had you guys been out there at all prior to that? Like maybe trying to get a record deal, shopping, anything at that time?
No, no, everything we did as far as trying to, we put out the first record on our own label
Right.
as a calling card to showcase and do things like that. We'd bust our ass in Detroit for a couple of weeks, save our money, and go to New York and do showcases like every 3-4 weeks, and we got basically signed out of New York. So yeah, we never went. That was like first time going to LA.
How did you feel about the second album in relationship to comparing it to the first one as far as the songs or the production?
I think the first album is more truly us. I mean, it represented basically, our struggle in a sense, as far as like what we were at the time, being hungry and stuff like that. And it's like we had so many songs that we had wrote that we could have picked them. The IRS basically picked the songs they wanted on the other album, and it's like, and then we went out to this granny's house in Reno, Nevada, and it was so coaster underneath your drink, and it was so we're like pick the equipment to make it work kind of guys.
Right.
And it's like a pristine, beautiful mansion, and it's like you can't do this, you can't, like that, and it felt so sterile, and
Right.
then it's like we did everything, we mixed it, and then Chuck's drums were messed up. We had to wait for more drums to come from San Francisco, and blah blah blah, and it was just like a nightmare. And it's like, why are we paying for all this for this place like that? I'd rather just record it in Detroit.
Yeah.
And this and that, and it just got to be so sterile. And then they had to remix, and then they remix songs, and it's like, I think the bass tone sucks, and it's like, that's not how my bass tone sounds. Different things like that. But I mean, I was happy to do it. Things all changed. It was like, and it's like, okay, Wednesday's your day to sing. Well,
Yes.
maybe Wednesday I don't feel like singing, and I wasn't feeling that great when I sang. And it's like, you're singing all day long, and I don't mean to be bitching or nothing like that, but it just wasn't as cool as the first album, I feel.
Well, why do you think they had you record in a place like that? I mean, you're out in LA. Why didn't they set you up in an LA studio?
I think that was like the newest place, and maybe the producers wanted to try the place out or something like that. It was on Recording Institute Technology magazine, Granny's house, a new up and coming place, and
Oh,
that's like where you're going to record at. Probably 3 times the amount of money that it would cost you to record in Detroit, but
yeah.
this is where we want to do it at, and we're paying for it, so this is what you get. They put us up at Circus. That's where we lived at for like 2 weeks, and we went in there and did everything, and it's like we had to use rented equipment. We brought our guitars. I'm playing out of, some Trace Elliott amp, which is cool, but it ain't my stuff.
They wouldn't let you bring your own stuff, or I mean, that was just too
Oh, that's
expensive.
then you got to ship it out there.
Yeah.
You got to do everything like that. Well, it's like we have in-house stuff. It's like, well, we're not that kind of a band.
Well, most
getting
bands aren't. They feel comfortable on their own gear.
I believe David brought his heads out there, but Chuck had to use rented equipment. And I had to use rented equipment. I had my bass, like Empty Arms and other songs like that are on that album. I had my Taurus bass pedals. I had to use some kind of stupid keyboard to make the bass parts, and it didn't sound right to me.
They did attempt to remaster. Were you any happier with that, or are you still not as happy as you would have been if you did it in Detroit?
Well, really, the remaster is just taking the original and just trying to brighten it up a bit or do different things. It's not like they had the individual tracks. It's like having the IRS record and seeing if you can EQ it a little bit different or something like that. That's what they meant by remastering. They had the 24-track, 2-inch tape to go in and redo everything.
I know the other thing that was really cool about that, one of the cool things about it, I think the album is strong as far as the song. Most of the people I know that would pretty much think the same thing. They thought it was sterile, especially compared to the first album. Even though the first album, the original mix, I understand you guys weren't all that happy with that either, but that the songs were still strong. How long before recording that second album had those songs been written?
You talking about for the IRS record?
Yes.
Well, all those songs were basically wrote between like 85 and 87.
So you already really pretty much had them in the bag.
Well, we were playing them out live, but those are like our newer songs that we recorded for Too Much Ain't Enough. It wasn't like we were playing them before we did the first record.
No, no, obviously not. I don't. Well, like I said, I don't recall you guys playing Crash Landing or any of that. Maybe Empty Arms, but I don't remember you playing Crash Landing. And I think that was one that was really strong off that album, or Anytime or Place. Were you guys actually playing those out in the bars at that time?
Oh yeah, yeah. Those are part of our regular sets.
Wow,
Yeah.
I must have missed those shows, or as was commonly known in those days, was a little out of my mind, as so many of the fans were. It was like that was the thing, man. It was like I get a little buzz on, have a few beers, and go see Seduce, man. It's just like, yeah, what a night! It's a Friday night, gotta go see Seduce.
Well, hey, we were right there with you.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I'm not going to take up too much of your time because I know you're a busy guy, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Are you
Okay.
are you still pretty much in contact with those with David and Chuck as far as
Yeah,
communication?
yeah. I'll text David every couple of weeks or whatever like that. We'll shoot the shit, and I'll talk to Chuck when I find a cool guitar, different things like that, of that nature. I mean, it'd be different if I was up there in Detroit,
Sure,
but
sure.
it's a different lifestyle down here in Nashville, and I don't miss the winters at all.
I don't
But
blame you.
yeah, we're still close, and it'd be different if I was up there. But in the same sense, that's what makes shows special now, is because we're
Yes.
not out there playing so much.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like,
It would get old for you guys to come here and be playing every week or every month. I get that. I get that.
yeah,
It's that much more special. Well, what I'm trying to get at is I hope you guys can get a show in before the year's out. I hope you.
well, nothing's written in stone, but there's no everybody's into it still. We were planning on playing last year, but then
Yeah,
things came up, and I'm
yeah.
not going to get into that. But David had some hardships going on,
Right.
and but yeah, I mean, we were going to do a album release party, IRS record, coming out of a different record company, but then COVID hit,
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
you can't expect to get paid like what you usually get paid if you're not allowing people into the club. So I mean, we all just still enjoy playing and doing our own thing, and it's like, oh, that it was a great past, but you never know, we might pop up a show this Christmas or something.
I hope so
Yeah.
because your shows are so good. They're just good. Like I was saying earlier, you guys are playing. Last few times I saw you play just phenomenally. You're tighter. I don't know if I want to say you're sober or cleaner or whatever. I know your health is phenomenal. You look like $1,000,000,
Well,
and people
well,
still want to see you.
my wife saved my life. I would have been dead if it wasn't for her.
That's
Really,
awesome.
lost a lot of weight, and I'm probably skinnier now than I've been in a long time.
Yeah.
But I'm happier now. I mean, I love Nashville. Nashville's kick ass, but I'm only 7, 8 hours away, so that's not a problem.
Yeah. Because the other thing too, I saw that it was quite interesting was I saw a video just recently that was like say on the Seduce page of you playing a stand-up bass.
Well, that's basically I play a lot of stand up down here.
Yeah, I would
I'm
imagine in Nashville, but I mean, is that something you had just taken up recently since you've been down there, or had you done that before?
Well, you know
Obviously
what?
not with Seduce.
No, I had an upright bass forever. A guy kind of calls me up back in the late '80s. Hey, I got this bass I want you to see. And it's okay, bring it over, and he comes over with this upright bass. I said, man, what the hell am I going to do with that? I said, I really don't want to buy it. I said, I'll, in a sense, pawn it to you, give you a couple $100 if you need some money. And I got the bass, and the guy ended up committing suicide.
Oh,
And so I've had this bass forever, and it was always in the corner, and I'd pluck on it here and there like that. But I had it. We had a bed and breakfast in California, and Lee Rocker stayed with us. And I said, "Come check this out." And he's up my butt all day long wanting to buy it. I'm like, "What's going on with this?" And so I'm gonna check this thing out, and it turns out it's like a 1939 K, highly collectible. I mean,
no
it's a little beat
doubt.
up, but it's still cool. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start taking care of this thing. So
Yeah.
when we moved to Nashville, I took it to this luthier here, Randy Hunt, the guy everybody takes their stuff to, and he's totally set it up and hooked it up like that. And I took a big liking to it, and I find it challenging, and I've been busting ass on it like that, playing all the rockabilly slaps and
Right.
stuff like that, doing all that kind of stuff, listening to all kinds of different music, and I find it challenging and fun, because I can play anything on an electric bass,
Yeah.
so I got this here, and it's like right there in my hallway, I just fuck on it every day and have fun.
Were you
Go
a
ahead.
self-taught bass player back in the day, or did you take lessons in your younger years? Or
I learned by ear everything. I've never took a lesson in my life.
And that had to be tough back in the day because there wasn't tab or any of that kind of stuff. You have to figure out
Oh,
everything
I
off the
wore out
records.
records.
Yeah,
Wore out records. Putting the needle back,
yeah,
learning
yeah.
the parts.
You're in the parts and
That's
trying
how
to
I
figure
learned.
out the lyrics and stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's like then David and I start teaching lessons at Guitars for Stars and Think They're Shores, and then half the people that came in for lessons were like just wanted to be hanging out with you and
Right.
teach me some Rush songs or some Iron Maiden songs. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I listened to it. I learned it. And I show them to it. And if they weren't good enough, I show them how to cheat on it. Then I get like one kid. It's like, show me a harmonic minor scale, and I'm like, duh. So if I heard it, I could play it, but
Right.
then I start broaden my horizon a little bit to learn a little bit more about theory and different things like that. But never took a lesson. And the only lesson I've ever taken was an upright lesson from a friend of mine here, Ronnie Crutcher, great musician. He taught me some basics around when I first started playing the upright. There's some slap techniques and different things, and I've been busting my ass on it ever since.
Well, it sounds really interesting. It sounds really cool. It's another feather in your hat, let's just say. And I
Oh
like
yeah,
that. And I like the hat, by the way. You look really cool in it, man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's become my trademark and everything. But I catch when I'm downtown. Hey, you look like Lemmy. You look like
Yeah.
Lemmy.
Well, that was the
I
first thing I thought too. As far as that, but you make the look your own, man. You really do.
Yeah.
It's a killer look.
I want to
So
get a rubber wart to put in my face or something.
I wouldn't go that far. I
Yeah.
wouldn't go that far. All right, Mark. Well, I'm gonna let you go, man. And again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Really, really appreciate that. If you can get a shout out to David for me, I'd like to do him too. But
Yeah,
I can't. I can't
touch
seem
base
to
with
get a
him.
hold of him.
I just need an interesting photo of Chuck, David.
Yes, I saw that too.
Brian and
Yeah,
those
it
guys
was.
from Halloween.
It was funny that you brought that up because the picture, I don't know, in the lighting, I thought his hair looked blonde, and I commented David Black as a blonde, and then somebody said no, that's gray. I'm like, oh, okay, nothing against that, no big deal. We all get older. So used to seeing you guys with the dark hair forever. Don't picture you guys getting gray.
Well, hey, I stick with that hair dye, man. I ain't letting that shit go off.
Hey, yeah, but you're in a young hip town too. You're in Tennessee, man.
That's where everybody's wrong because you see guys that are 75 years old up there just wailing and nobody cares.
No, I don't mean as far as the music scene. I'm just saying just in general. A lot of young people are wanting to move. I'd be there myself. Just because of the music scene, because of the clubs and what pretty much
7 days
here.
a week, man.
Yeah,
7 days a week, man. From 10 in the morning till 3 in the morning. There's 5-6 different levels of bands playing every building. It's like
your wife's not letting you do that, is she? She's not letting you stay out 7 nights.
What's that?
Your wife's not letting you stay out 7 nights a week doing that, right?
Oh no, but it's there if you want it.
Right, I know.
I mean, it's something you got to experience. We don't even hang out on Broadway. That's where all the tourists are like that. But Nashville's like a wagon wheel, and downtown is like the hub. And there's all little spokes that go to these all different cool little areas, have their own little thing to offer. That's where we go, But if somebody comes to town, I got to take them to Broadway because it's off the hook. You got to see it.
The last thing I want to mention to you is a good friend of mine who's in a band with Mark Wolf. You remember Mark, right?
I remember Mark very well. And actually, I listened to your podcast with him. Yeah.
He mentioned he was one of your early roadies. And he used to get to sit on the stairs and listen to you guys and all that. And I said, wow, I envy you, man. That would have been so killer to be hanging out in those days.
That was at the Dearborn House.
Yeah.
And I met Mark through Mickey and John Grosjean and all them people like that because he was with them guys previously before he Steve David,
Yeah.
But he's a cool guy, man. Yeah.
He told me. He's the one that's told me so many stories about you and really got me into your music and your band and all that. And Mickey couldn't say enough about your bass playing. He said a lot of people don't realize how great a bass player Mark really is. I don't know if he was trying to say that, playing the style of music you were playing in Seduce, you dumbed it down a little bit because, you had to fill in the sound, which is one guitar, but he couldn't stop talking about phenomenal guitar or bass player you were.
Mickey and I, as far as the rhythm section goes, clicked very well. It's like we knew each other so well.
Yeah.
And, he'd start something, I'd finish it, and vice versa. And it's just like, we were like the John Bonham and Paul Jones,
Yeah.
of our time. But it's like of my tone because of being three piece, running distortion with like that to fill up that spec. It was just fun times. We
Yeah.
always got them great. As long as Chuck, man, Chuck's my ultimate drummer.
Yes.
It's like when we're together, it's like it's a locomotive. You know,
Totally,
but it's
totally
like
different sound, but there again, it works. It really works.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
magic, man. It really is just killer.
I always I always had a saying that I always said it's like Chuck and I hold down the fortress while David humps the fences.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true, man. That's true.
yeah,
Well, again,
but
Mark, I'll let you go, and I really, like I said, I really want to thank you for doing this, and I hope you do well in Tennessee, and I hope sometime this year you guys can get it together and come play, and I also hope that you can get out some new music because what I heard of it was downright killer. It was just great stuff, and I know when the final mixes come out, people are gonna want it. They're gonna want it big time.
well, there's anything can happen. Actually, I was thinking about coming up here in a couple of weeks to Detroit, just not having a gig or nothing like that, just to hang out, see my guys, and go to dinner, and
Sure.
see some of my relatives and stuff like that. Just to touch base with them, and I mean, like I said, yeah, I'm a plane ride away. That's 2 hours.
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
I have no problem, coming up there and writing songs and doing all that stuff like that because that's the kind of band we are. I can't write a song here and send David the
Yeah. No.
MP3 and
No.
back
I
and
know.
forth
I
just to
know.
feel off each other and play off each other. It'd be wonderful like that. But then at the end of the day, it's like at our ages, what we put a new album together and we'll tour the world in a band.
Yeah.
That's not
No.
going to
No.
happen.
No. I can
Just for the
understand
love
that.
of playing.
Yeah, for the love of
Yeah,
playing and for the fans. For
yeah,
nothing more than the fans, because I know, when you guys play the show, it's a big like reunion type thing, and that's how it feels. It's just like brings back such great memories for everyone of the good old
yeah.
days. So you're continuing on, and you're doing other things, and that's fine. And it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of write around the people I play with. Like, after Seduce, I play with, Joey Gatos and Gunner from Strut
Right.
and different bands and stuff like that was the band I was referring to as far as like having harmonies and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I mean, down here, I'm, like a hired gun. I play with a bunch of different people like there. One guy I was playing with just went off to play guitar for Boss Skaggs.
No
And
doubt.
there's so many quality players down here. It's like kind of
Oh
humbling.
yeah. Yeah.
But in the same sense, I'm not going to be one of those guys that plays Broadway every night because I don't need
Sure.
to. But yeah, I mean, I'm helping out my daughter. She's doing her own records and stuff in LA. And Penny Harlow, she goes by that name like that, and she's phenomenal.
Oh, that's
Uh,
interesting. Been waiting to hear that. Does she have
yeah, I
anything out
mean,
yet, or is she just working on it
oh, she's
stuff?
on Spotify. She's got stuff,
Oh,
TV shows and movies, and she was a song on Adidas and different things. She's like on a lot of stuff. She works with Andrew Grant, a producer, does a lot of electronic dance music,
yeah.
EDM music. They fly her to Finland, and she does different things. She's phenomenal.
Wow, I'll
I
have to
had her.
check
I
it
had her
out.
down here. I had her meet Peter Keys, who's a keyboard player, was with George Clinton in Parliament, and he plays with Leonard Skinner now. He wanted to sign her and pick her up, and it's pretty cool. Penny Harlow,
Yeah,
she goes by.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
She goes by Penny Harlow.
Penny Harlow. Okay. I
Yep.
will definitely look
Yeah.
that up. That
Yeah.
sounds killer, man.
No, she's had a few different business names, but Penny Harlow is what she's going by now. You can check that out.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
Okay, again, Mark, thanks so much, man. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. I was a little
Okay.
nervous about doing this initially because I had put you guys in such a pedestal for years. My band back in the day really looked up to you guys and wanted to be big like you guys and all that as far as the sound and the original music. And you guys did it. Whether or not you broke through on a national level didn't matter, man. You did it. You did it your way, and there's a lot to be said for that.
Well, I'm sure like talking with Chuck and maybe hook you up with David, we could probably do interviews for hours and hours because
Yes.
there's so many stories to tell.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure.
yeah, this was fun.
All right, man. Thank you so much. And as I like to always say, keep rocking.